Good afternoon. I'm Treyon White, a council member of Ward 8 and the chair of the Committee on Recreation, Library, and Youth Affairs. Today is Monday, March, April the 4th, 2022, and we are meeting remotely using the Zoom platform. The time is now 12:05 p.m. and I'm calling to order this public hearing on the budget oversight for DC Public Libraries. The DC Public Libraries was created in 1896 by Act of Congress. The library was established as an independent agency that would serve as the People's University. The DC Public Library includes a central library and 25 neighborhood libraries. Library services also provide insight into the DC jail. The DC Public Library support residents with services and programming, books, and other library materials that align with the library's Know Your Neighborhood strategic plan. In the last few months, the committee has held 2 public roundtables for trustees, one regarding concern in the name of Mlk Auditorium and an agency performer oversight hearing, and today a budget oversight hearing. The budget oversight hearing is a day before the National Library Workers' Day. The National Library Workers' Day, a day for the library staff, users, administrators, and friends group to recognize the valuable contributions that are made by all library workers. So it's benefiting that we are hearing to discuss DC Public Libraries today. I'm looking forward to hearing from both public and government witnesses today. Just so you know, the first panel witnesses will have 3 minutes unless you are a agency, organization, or ANC. You would have 5. So we start with our first government witnesses. With that being said, we're going to call Zachary Israel, Alex Lopez, Commissioner Israel, Commissioner Lopez, Robert Oliver, Federation of DC Public Library Friends, Engine, Friends of Dingwell Library, President, Mark Patterson, Friends of Juanita E. Thornton Shepard Park Library. If we can bring them on the screen. Okay, we're going to start with you, Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you, Chairperson White and members of the committee. My name is Alex Lopez and I'm the ANC Commissioner for 6002. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on the DCPL FY23 budget. For the second year in a row, the mayor's budget proposes closing the Northwest 1 Library in FY24 and moving the library to Eckington Edgewood. And for the second year in a row, I testified before you asking that this committee not force these 2 neighborhoods to fight over library resources in a game of manufactured scarcity. For decades, the Northwest 1 Sursum Corda neighborhood has been underserved by DCPL. Before the Northwest 1 Library opened in 2009, the neighborhood made do with a metal and plexiglass library kiosk. This library kiosk was erected in the 1970s and was intended to last no more than 7 years, but the kiosk remained open for over 3 decades before a permanent facility was built. The 5,000 square foot Northwest 1 Library that replaced the kiosk is one of the smallest libraries in the DCPL system and suffers from a limited circulation, limited computer workstations, and lacks amenities such as meeting rooms, study rooms, and programming spaces. Closing the Northwest 1 Library does not address the inadequacy of the current facility. What it does is create an acute service gap and sets library standard levels for the Northwest 1 community back to even before the era of the kiosk. The DCPL Facilities Master Plan includes an equity impact statement that acknowledges that DCPL's placement, size, and programming of public libraries have not always factored in the needs of residents. The equity impact statement commits DCPL to further scrutinizing individual recommendations contained in its plan to ensure that there are no unanticipated adverse impacts to community members. The closure of the Northwest One Library constitutes an acutely adverse impact to the Northwest One community that should have been obvious to the plan's authors. An equity statement is incomplete if it does not also acknowledge and actively work to reverse the harm created by decades of systemic disinvestment by DCPL in low-income and Black communities, including the Sursum Corda Northwest One community. At the DCPL FY22 budget oversight hearing last June, Director Reyes-Gavilan told this committee that DCPL would be doing more due diligence regarding the facility master plan. The DCPL is incredibly proud of its community engagement, especially around capital projects, and that the facilities master plan is not a substitute for community engagement. Rather, it is the starting point. Given Director Reyes-Gavilan's comments at last year's hearing, I am disappointed to report that there has been zero community engagement related to the closure of Northwest One Library, not a single community meeting. The Northwest One Library was planned as the community anchor and cultural gateway for the Northwest One community as part of the Northwest One redevelopment plan, a plan that was drafted by residents and adopted into law by this council. The goal of the Northwest One redevelopment plan was to create a mixed income, mixed use community where residents have quality housing options, and a neighborhood library is a critical element of this plan. The mayor's proposed closure of the Northwest One Library precisely when the first residents are finally returning to a redeveloped Northwest One and over 3,200 new units are anticipated for this area is a betrayal of trust for the residents who helped draft the Northwest One redevelopment plan and constitutes yet another failure of the New Communities Initiative to deliver on its promises to the residents in Northwest One. In closing, I ask this committee to designate funding for the replacement of the current Northwest One Library with a new library to be located in and continue to serve the growing Northwest One community. The new library should be at least 20,000 square feet, and the design, amenities, and programming for the new library should be guided through extensive outreach with the Northwest One Sursum Corda community. Thank you, and I welcome any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Mr. Robert Oliver, Federation of DW Library and Friends, President.
Good afternoon, council member and staff, and happy Library Workers' Day. I would like to start by saying that, like everyone else, the Federation of Library Friends have had a trying 2 years since the start of the pandemic. Our overall membership ranks have fallen, but we intend to rebuild once COVID-19 wanes. We continue to recognize DCPL and its staff as they have, for all they have done during the pandemic. DCPL has transitioned from a fully functional system to closing in 2020, migrating its services to an online environment, hosting limited in-person access with curb access, and finally moving towards normalcy while celebrating the opening of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library. Additionally, the DCPL staff assisted the DC Health Agency distribute COVID-19 test kits to the public and in turn won the respect of this city. This year, the mayor's budget provides funding to increase library hours at all locations. This is welcome news. We now have more time for homework, students doing their homework, children story time and other after school play activities, and for adults hosting meetings. Mayor Bowser achieved this by providing $1.8 million to hire 22 full-time employees to extend branch operations at all sites. However, there are issues that require attention. The first is security. The library can no longer be considered a haven that is untouched by its surroundings. I'll give you two examples. One, about a year or so ago, there was a teenager that was attacked by her peers outside of the Capitol View Library. The manager at that time intervened at cost to himself as he was struck by several individuals. He retrieved the young lady, brought her inside, and kept her there until the teenagers dissipated. There is also an issue where a staff member was attacked at Southwest Library. These incidents, instead of becoming less frequent, are becoming more frequent. And so what I'm asking is that a guard be stationed full-time at each library location that requires it. Not all library locations want a guard, but those that do should be given one. I think that can help in ensuring the safety levels at our libraries. This is also important in that as we extend the library hours, we are encroaching upon the evening time. The majority of library staff are women, and when they are closing, it would be helpful to have a guard there to assist them and have them feel better as they ask some patrons who may be recalcitrant to speed up a little bit to move forward and allow the library to close on time. So I am asking that DCPL make an effort to ensure that we have a guard to continue the safety of our staff and our patrons, which is of utmost importance. The second thing that I ask is that DCPL develop a plan to expand its fabrication lab capabilities beyond downtown. Like everyone, I am interested in literacy. I was shocked to hear children now entering the 5th grade have trouble reading. However, these children have not been in a classroom setting since the 2nd grade. So now they're in the 5th grade and they are really struggling at this point. I think that moving devices such as a 3D printer or laser printer could spark the desire to learn in these children and their peers. Properly crafted programs leading to early success will provide the motivation needed. Purchasing the equipment is the easy part. The hard part is finding staff to actually sit down and provide the training and run these devices. Basically, what I had suggested earlier at an earlier performance hearing was that maybe there could be a plan put into place to convert some of the existing staff by giving them a pathway into performing these type of jobs. I understand now that that is an easier said than done because basically it involves sorting through personnel issues, union issues, and also issues of pay equity. That's why I'm asking that DCPL invest the time in envisioning how a solution is workable and have something that we can possibly review in 3 months or more. I do understand, however, that DC has invested in a mobile tech lab that can go from various sites. I think that this is a step in the right direction, but I think that we need more. That concludes my testimony, and I am ready to address any questions that you may have for me now or in a later round. Thank you.
Thank you. Engine, Friends of Deanwood Library.
Yep, that's me. Thank you, Councilmember White. Good afternoon, Chair White, committee members and staff. My name is Dr. Tin-Vin Nguyen. I am a Deanwood resident and the incoming president of the Friends of Deanwood Library. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We are a community-based group that supports the Deanwood Library. We are part of the wider Federation of Friends of DC Public Library. During this pandemic, we've been fortunate to have been able to continue to virtually meet and provide programming again virtually, and have been actively engaged in mutual aid efforts in Ward 7 and Ward 8. We continue to be engaged. We know that many of our friends too have continued to provide invaluable community connections and much needed virtual programming during this time. I want to start off my testimony with a big and heartfelt thank you. Thank you, Chair White. Thank you to this committee, and thank you to Muriel Bowser, DC Council, our Ward 7 Council member, Vincent Gray, DC Public Library, and our ANC 7C for your $24 million FY22 funding to build a full service full-size library in Deanwood. We are asking for continued community engagement with this project. We would like to also thank our community activists, librarians, and library friends, many on this call, near and far, for your leadership, mentorship, and solidarity and support. We believe that this will be a transformative project and a major community asset. We are hopeful that a bigger space will allow us to have more community programming, finally have meeting rooms, and have programming for youth and their families. Libraries are magical spaces full of possibility, and we love that our DC libraries are also community places that are truly accessible and welcoming to DC residents free of charge. As such, DCPL is a treasure in the city. With the site for the newer and bigger library, that has not been decided, but our Deanwood community and the Friends of the Deanwood Library would like to recommend that it be at the WMATA Deanwood Metro parking lot, which is across the street from the current Deanwood Recreation Center, which is where our existing small library sits. We support a standalone library given coordination issues between DC agencies as part of being co-located. As noted by DCPLIO staff, having a separate and standalone library would allow the existing small library to serve as an interim library during the development process. And to date, WMATA has issued a call for a future joint development real estate project at the Deanwood Metro station that would convert the station's park and ride surface parking lot into a new mixed use and transit-oriented development. We would like to express our support for mixed use development, particularly retail, as part of the new Deanwood Library development project. We also echo support and calls from our neighbors for a grocery store and more food-oriented development. So we really believe that this could be an incredibly transformative project, and we're excited for the $24 million. Our neighborhood also welcomes the increase of more public spaces, from parks to libraries to recreation centers and other community spaces. So our Friends group is also seeking funding to renovate, repair, and reimagine the neglected and historic Deanwood Library kiosk. At 120 square feet and located at Marvin Gaye Park, it is one of the smallest libraries in the nation. It's no longer in use. And it serves as a historic reminder of when neighborhoods west of the Anacostia River had large grand libraries, while east of the river, we had these small kiosks. Our neighborhood and our area also has fewer designated historic monuments and landmarks than elsewhere in the city. So this kiosk was damaged by a car in 2020, and the wider neighborhood, with support for our ANC 7C and D and local media, has fought to stop this kiosk from demolition. Yet the kiosk remains neglected, damaged, and unused. So our group would like to steward the space and work with the community to creatively reimagine and reuse the space and to honor and preserve its history, a history that is stark in inequality, yet is also, lots of neighbors have brought up warm stories of this community space as the kiosk. We understand that DCPL is no longer in charge of this kiosk, but we are asking this committee, which oversees the Department of Parks and Recreation, to fund and support this project, since the kiosk sits at Marvin Gaye Park and is on the Deanwood Heritage Trail. So I'm here for any questions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Mark Patterson, Friends on Juanita, Shepard Library. Let's see. Oh, Mark Patterson.
Here I am.
Mark.
You can see me, you can hear me.
All
Yes.
right.
Thank you. I'm Mark Patterson, president of the Friends of the Juanita E. Thornton Shepard Park Library. Thank you for allowing me to testify here. I am here to ask the committee to decouple the opening of a new library to serve Manor Park and Brightwood Park from the closing of the Shepard Park Library, now closer to its pre-pandemic circulation than any branch and ranked in the top 3 in Spanish titles circulated. In my February testimony, I noted how our Friends group was still waiting for answers to our question regarding DCPL's next Libris Masters Facilities Plan. They finally came, and I'm going to use some of those answers to further build our case against closure and for decoupling. And my written testimony has the full Q&A from our friends, and also there are some future supporting documents as well. Now, next Libris on page 4 calls for a systems refresh for a number of libraries, and Shepard Park is in the first phase for one, but it wasn't funded last year or this coming year. We'd asked, what gives? And the reply from Martha Sacaccio, DCPL's Director of Community Engagement was, quote, the city's capital budget currently has funding for a new library to replace the Shepard Park Library in the fiscal year 2027. Funding to replace Shepard Park Library would negate the need to conduct a systems refresh. That negligence dooms the library to planned obsolescence. We've pointed out that a new library would be about 1.5 miles to 2 miles from the Shepard Park Library. The Tacoma Park Library is about 3/4 of a mile away, but it's small, 43% the size of Shepard Park's. And page 12 of Appendix B of Next Libris shows that Shepard Park's gate count is already higher than Tacoma Park's. Does DCPL think everyone is going to go 2 miles away? Still, Sacaccio argues, quote, the Tacoma Park Library currently has capacity to serve more customers than it does, unquote. Everybody? At an open house at Tacoma Park this fall, a friend of mine from another neighborhood stepped inside, saw the cramped conditions, and asked me, where is the adult section? Unaware that she was standing in it. Most problematic has been DCPL dangling a library in Walter Reed for 6 years. When Executive Director Richard Reyes-Gavilan looked at me during a Federation of Friends meeting and told me, we're looking at providing library services inside Walter Reed. Are you okay with that, Mark? So what has happened since 2016? Nothing at all. Last August, when rumors surfaced about a Walter Reed library, I asked the Parks at Walter Reed development team if there were plans for a library. I got a reply August 17 from Thaddeus Green from the Executive Office of the Mayor and Walter Reed Development Director, in which he said, quote, the district currently does not have any specific plans for a library on the campus, unquote. During the DCPL performance oversight hearing in February, one of our own Friends members voiced her support for relocating the Shepard Park Library to Walter Reed. So I emailed Mr. Green before the hearing ended if there were any changes. His complete reply was, quote, no, there have not been any changes since my August 17 email. Yet Sacaccio, in a question posed about Walter Reed, said, quote, we have not taken any options off the table. So which is it? For 6 years, it's been all talk by DCPL and no action. That makes Walter Reed a red herring. After all, why should they lease when they already own space? If they were going to move, they could have publicly committed 3 years ago when the development team was still scraping for a supermarket anchor. I'm sure any retailer would love to have 20,000 square feet occupied by somebody who brings added traffic that doesn't compete with any of them. Government investments mean a lot to communities. Look at the city's commitment to the U Street corridor decades ago with the Reeves Center. It's time for DCPL to fish or cut bait on a library for Walter Reed. The city can serve Manor Park and Brightwood Park well with a library investment, but we will not accept its disinvestment to Shepard Park, a growing part of a growing city, and neither should you. I stand ready to answer any and all questions you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we will hear from Commissioner Israel for the 04.
Thank you very much, Chairman White. And actually, my testimony is very well timed following the previous witnesses, because I'm here to talk about needed funding for a new DC Public Library in Brightwood Park in Ward 4, which I have the honor of representing part of, in addition to parts of Petworth. And for the record, I'm testifying today in my individual capacity as a commissioner, not on behalf of ANC4D. And like I said just a moment ago, the one thing I want to talk about in the FY23 budget for DCPL is the line item. It says new 4A library, but really what we should want it to say is a new 4D library, because we need a new library here in ANC4D. our community, if you go to any community meetings on public safety, as an example, we've had a significant increase in gun violence in our community. And what you hear constantly from residents is that we want the district government to invest more resources here in Brightwood Park, along the Kennedy Street corridor, as an example. And a new library, in addition to doing all the great things that our libraries do, it would also serve as an anchor for the community and provide other district government resources potentially. I can imagine a job center there, right? So that young people in our community have a way of finding work and other things like that. And if you notice in the FY23 budget, it does say $25 million for a new library in Ward 4. And that's building on the library facilities master plan that was released in November 2020, really making the case that we need a library in this part of Ward 4. It's underserved. The Petworth Library is about a mile away. The libraries up in Tacoma and Shepard Park are too far away. And so while I hear the concerns of the previous witness, if you talk to people that actually live in Brightwood Park, they would tell you that this is something that would really help our community significantly. And it would be a major investment that, again, could be rooted and have other district government components be part of that. Let me just look here at some of the language from the library facilities plan in making an argument in favor of this. It says, quote, "This area has a high concentration of individuals with low educational attainment, children ages birth to 9 in single parent households. Additionally, there are a lot of individuals living in the area who do not currently use the library and have the potential to become customers. Expanding library services to this area may relieve pressure on the services of the Petworth Library nearby, a full-size library with low square feet per capacity due to population density." So the DC Public Library System basically made that case themselves in that document. And so we have a real opportunity here. Now, in an ideal world, they would have money in their budget for renovating the library up in Shepard Park and creating a brand new one down here. But if the options are between one or the other, I have to make the argument in defense of my community. We need it here in Brightwood Park. It is an under-resourced area. And I think the impacts, the positive impacts of a brand new library here would very likely outweigh any costs elsewhere in Ward 4. Again, not the ideal. I would want there to be funding for everything, but if you have to pick and choose, that's what I would make the argument in favor of. And I know that this budget is a long-term investment. If you look at the budget line item, it's like 4.3 million for FY27 and the other 20.7 million for FY 2028. But the council really needs to start that discussion right now so that by the end of this decade, construction is up and running and we don't have to sort of scramble for the funds at the last minute. There are many places along Kennedy Street, for instance, where a new library can be built. There are blighted properties, there are nuisance properties that I know for a fact the district government is already considering sort of condemning. And what better way to replace those properties with a brand new library that could really serve our community well here in Brightwood Park. So really appreciate the opportunity to testify, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
And I'm gonna jump back a little bit. I want to thank you guys for testifying this morning. Let me go to this. Go to Gustavo Lopez real quick. There he is. Sorry. What library is closest to the Northwest One Library right now?
Currently, walking distance, it's about a mile from the Northwest One Library to the Shaw Library, although you do have to cross New York Avenue, and it's also about a mile from Northwest One to the Mlk Library.
Okay. What is the current closest library to the Edgewood Library?
That is, I'm not confident, but I don't believe that a single library can adequately serve both communities.
Based on size or based on distance, based on what?
Both based on distance as well as based on physical barriers. Large streets such as North Capitol and New York Avenue are clearly, physical and psychological barriers to users crossing those. Additionally, train tracks. There's just a lot of reasons why these two communities probably won't. There's probably not a location that will adequately serve both communities.
Got it. And based on the recent, I guess, government's responses through the, I guess, the capital area plan, what is the, how do I want to say this? When is this plan supposed to begin, and what do you see as some of the inadequacies with replacing these libraries?
Well, first of all, in the lead up to the facilities master plan, there was no community outreach to ANC 6E or the community in the Northwest 1. And since this is the second year that we've seen a budget proposal to close the Northwest 1 library, and DCPL has conducted zero community outreach around this closure. So I think just overall, I was hearing some other testimony from witnesses. The community outreach strategy around these capital investments is completely inadequate. As it stands, this is the second year that the capital improvement plan would close the Northwest 1 library, I believe, in FY 24.
Okay. All right. And did you get an answer on when everybody will be coming back to the new library?
I'm sorry, can you clarify the question?
So I heard in your testimony, from what I heard, is that you feel like that the libraries that are being proposed are not feasible for both communities. And so I don't know, from listening, what's the projected date for the ones online versus what we should be thinking about as far as creating a new one or putting a new one in the budget. And sometimes, as you heard, like, we put money in the budget, but it's for, I just heard 2028.
Sure.
And so that sometimes we as the council work with the mayor to push money up, and then we push money up, we able to put more money in the budget to create more than one entity. And so that helps us better understand how do we move to kind of like, if it's a pot for 25 million, we know in the future we're gonna have more millions. We can kind of split that money up to get started and at least doing a $500,000 study to find out a more feasible location. I think someone, yeah.
The capital improvement plan allocates $24.5 million across FY 24, 25, and 26 to build a new neighborhood library serving the Eckington Edgewood neighborhoods. In that FY 24-25 timeframe, the current Northwest 1 library would be closed. There's also a budget line item in the DPR capital improvement plan to extend the R.H. Terrell Rec Center, which is right next to the Northwest 1 library, extend that into the space that's currently occupied by the library. So that current library space is under the mayor's plan is slated for other uses starting in FY 24 and would be closed as a library facility.
Got it. All right. Thank you. And I'll try to come back if I have more time. Mr. Oliver, I know we it's like we're seeing each other on a regular basis now with these Zooms, which is good. Have you discussed, Mr. Oliver back there he is. Have you discussed any of these security issues with these public libraries? I'm seeing more of this concern around libraries, schools, and recreation centers. If you can speak to any conversations you had with these public libraries and their responses.
Yes, this has been a issue that the Friends have raised off and on with DCPL, and we intend to raise the issue again at our next meeting, which we have scheduled for April the 20th. I'll say this, that DCPL has been responsive to our concerns, and we hope that it will become more fruitful. I think that what's driving everything is the increase in violence that's going on in the community. A lot of it is driven to because of COVID-19. People have stayed home much too long. The kids are going back to school, and they've kind of lost a sense of camaraderie amongst themselves and other issues. But we need to have security, and DCPL is well aware of that. They brought in a new individual by the name of Mr. Morrissey, who is very helpful. In addition, they have been working, I think, with MPD on some small joint project. So they are listening. We just like to have a decision as to getting where we can get guards in place faster, and that requires a shifting of funding. Then I think DCPL's management needs to discuss how they can get funding, if not from the mayor, at least influence individuals who understand these issues like yourself, and get these things done.
Got it. You discussed the classes that will not be offered. I think there should be more. What classes are you referring to as far as in libraries?
As far as the library is concerned, I think that they have a pretty good repertoire of classes. What I'm looking for, though, is to expand what they call their fabrication lab capability outside of MLK. They have a laser printer there. They have 3D printers and other exotic technologies that I think that can go out to other libraries to act as satellites at the very least. One of the issues there is that getting the staff, enough staff trained to allow that to happen. Southwest has the equipment in place, but they are having a hard time keeping a trainer. And for any of us to move that equipment outside to other libraries that can act as satellites. So let's say, for example, we can put one in, say, Benning, and that would make it easy for everyone across the river to consolidate at that location to work on these exotic technologies. But right now, there is not enough trained staff to do that. And so I'm just putting a plan out there for DCPL to envision, how can we do that, if not now, at some point in the future?
Got it. Dr. Thinkman, help me pronunciate your name.
That's pretty good. Tinvin. And then my
Tinvin.
last name, yeah,
Your last name is what?
it's Win, like W-I-N.
Okay. All right. You talked about the inadequacies historically between west of the river and east of the river as relates to library opportunities, and there were a lot of these small libraries throughout east of the river. And I remember we had a few in Ward 8. I remember 3 particularly growing up. And you talked about Deanwood kiosks. How do you reimagine what that looks like?
Yeah, I think for us, it's about speaking with the community. There was so much interest when we put out a petition to stop the demolition, because people remember the old librarian there who was like a grandmother. There were only, a small portion of books there, but I think that it was such a community space. We've been reimagined in a couple of different ways. I think that it's on the the Marvin Gaye Trail. So you got a lot of folks walking in the area, some cyclists there too. And so I think that it's really asking the community what they would like that space to be like. But we can see it as, we've heard everything from like a potential art gallery, a place where people could lend and borrow supplies, to it just being like a pop-up space. And then there's also folks saying like, can we have it be like a, community cafe space, an entrepreneurial space? There's just so much interest. And I think that the kiosk itself is pretty cool. It's like retro. And it is, you've visited these. And so I think that it's just already right there at the park. And so it's unutilized space. I don't think that you can necessarily build anything. And I don't know if you would, because it's green space there. And so, we would love to steward it, work with different communities, different community members to kind of figure out like how this could be a really great community space. Yeah. And I don't think that I want to like specifically, overstate like what we would want, because like I think it's a community engagement process.
And has that process started at all with DC?
No, it hasn't. So even though, we were able to stop demolition, it's just completely vacant. And I think that it's unclear whether it's under DGS, Parks and Rec, or DCPL. And then the most important thing is that there's no kind of funding or capital budget to kind of fix it, repair it, maintain it, and reactivate it.
Okay.
So I think that we need to think through, like, how do we fix and repair it so it could be structurally safe, and then, like, what community groups can steward it, and kind of have it maybe like a rotating calendar of events, or if it remains a historic landmark with like information around what this kiosk is. But I think, to my knowledge, it's one of the last remaining kiosks in the city.
Yep.
I think some have been moved to museums, but like this one still stands.
Got it. Thank you. I see I'm running out of time. Mr. Patterson, what has been the responses, I guess, from your communication with DCPL around Shepard Park's library renovations, and Walter Reed?
Well, there have been no conversations, if truth be
Okay.
told. Certainly on that a subject. Renovations at Shepard Park Library, if they're looking at not even doing a systems refresh, then they're not interested, apparently, in keeping it going. But although Richard Reyes-Gavilan did talk about the possibility that if these numbers that we've been trotting out these past couple of hearings keep up, then you may have to renovate the library, which would require closing the library for a certain amount of time. But until those sentiments are expressed in numbers, then I'm doubtful and dubious.
Okay. How far is the Shepard Park Library from the Tacoma Park Library?
About 3/4 of a mile.
Okay.
Tacoma was one of the early libraries, and probably back then it was the first branch library that was put in existence in the District of Columbia. And it's like 8,275 square feet, which is not what you would build in a library today. But it's historic, so you can't really do anything. You can't shutter it, can't tear it down.
All right, let me ask Mr. Israel real quick, Commissioner. Are you in favor of closing the Shepard Library and moving to the Brightwood Library, or keeping it open and just building another one? I guess I need clarity on where you stand with that.
Well, so, I mean, it's complicated, but first and foremost, I mean, Brightwood Park needs a new library, full stop, period. It would be ideal if there would be additional funding to keep the one in Shepard Park, either a new one or renovate it, whatever that community wants, on addition to that. But first and foremost, the Brightwood Park neighborhood needs one. Again, the two closest ones to our area are Petworth Library, over a mile away from Brightwood Park, and Tacoma, over a mile away. And there's a lot of needs, and you gotta look at the socioeconomics of the families that live here as well.
Got it. And what is the conversation around interim spaces for library options? I think that one of the things I've been watching in our education hearings is the widening of the achievement gap and the literacy gap throughout the district during COVID. And I'm concerned that we are in transition during these libraries, which is a great thing. But I don't know if we're covering bases, make sure we have something going on in those spaces in the interim. Because I know we have one proposed new coming to Turner, which is in a different space than it is now, but I'm not sure all the landscapes throughout the district as far as in other communities just yet. And so I'm on a mission to figure that out. If you can speak to any of that, if you know.
Is that to me, Chairman?
Yeah, you or anyone else who's going through a transition in the community around library options.
Yeah, well, I mean, just really quickly speaking, in our neighborhood, we don't already have a library, right? So it's more of a matter of eventually, hopefully later this decade, identifying the right spot. But there's a lot of vacant buildings on Kennedy Street. So with some innovation, we could figure that out.
Anyone else want to chime in?
I just want to say that there are 4 small neighborhood libraries in the DCPL system: Rosedale, Deanwood, Parklands, Turner, and Northwest 1. Of those 4 libraries, Northwest 1 is the only library that DCPL proposes closing and moving to a different neighborhood. There are, as you're aware, there are a number of developments going on in the Northwest One area that would potentially have the capacity to host a new library, including the Sursum Corda redevelopment being done by Toll Brothers, which has a 20,000 square foot retail space where they've recently filed a new application at the Zoning Commission to request that that retail space be converted to residential because they're presumably having trouble finding a tenant. DCPL library would be an ideal community-oriented tenant for that type of space on M Street.
Got it. I do know that DCPL has appetite to co-locate with housing and businesses. So I guess that's definitely an option, in which we have to discuss with the executive, of course, and DMPED. But I was thinking about anyone else. Now we go to the next panel. We're also joined by our Ward 4 Councilmember Janisha Lewis George. Do you have an opening statement, or you just want to wait to the next panel?
Next panel, I want to thank Commissioner Zach Israel, as well as Mark Patterson from the Shepard Park Friends of the Shepard Park Library for both of their testimonies. I think both of them know that I'm a supporter of making sure, one, that we bridge the gap between Brightwood Park, which is a neighborhood with a high density, with diverse socioeconomic backgrounds that deserves a library and is in need of that support. For Brightwood Park, I've also asked for that library to also include possibly an Americans Job Center, as well as the Pathways program to be co-located with that, or some type of housing as well. And so that's an area that we know. We have the Kennedy Street corridor, the Georgia Avenue corridor. And so right now there's just a question of working with the executive to see what is going to be possible they have started the conversations, I think, with Brightwood Park community members around around picking a location. I wanted it to be the location where they replaced the Rite Aid, but now they just put a Dollar Tree there. So I guess it will not be that location because that's what I asked for. But I'm a huge supporter of the Juanita Thornton Shepard Park Library. Their programming is phenomenal. Their staff is phenomenal. And it's been a huge resource. So the goal is to get both communities what they need to serve their communities, but really recognizing that Brightwood Park, Manor Park gap and how important and critical is for students to be able to go there and families to be able to go there and to get the support that they need. So yeah, we're working on it. I'm going to continue to work with Chairman White as well as Director Reyes to make it happen. But thank you both.
Thank you. We jump to Iola Ann. Yvette Banfield, CNHED, Vice President of Economic Development Policy, Robert Diner, Libraries Renaissance Project. Ms. Paula Edwards, Namali James. Let me ask this real quick. Ms. Zena Whitworth, are you testifying today? I see you in the comments. Let's see if you can pull everyone to the screen. All right. Iola. Is Miss Iola Ain here? I'm looking. I don't see her. Okay, we'll keep going. Yvette Banfield, I see you, Miss Yvette. You can go right ahead.
Great, fantastic. Good afternoon, Chairperson Trayvon White and members of the Committee on Recreation, Libraries, and Youth Affairs. I'm Yvette Banfield, Vice President of Economic Development Policy at the Coalition for Nonprofit Housing and Economic Development. Libraries across the country are playing an essential role in advancing digital literacy. For example, the Public Library Association reported how libraries are extending even further their technology services and resources despite the limitations due to the pandemic and serving as de facto digital equity hubs. According to this report, more than 88% of all public libraries offer formal or informal digital literacy programming. And over 1/3, about 36.7% of public libraries have dedicated digital literacy and technology programs and training staff. The DC Public Library has one dedicated digital literacy coordinator at the MLK Memorial Library, the District Central Library. In light of this expanded role, CNHED applauds the DC Public Library's effort to increasingly making digital literacy accessible to district residents. For this reason, CNHED requests Council to commit $800,000 in the FY 2023 budget to fund the DC Public Library's adult services, enabling them to continue providing services and programs to adults 20 and older in literacy, workforce development, and technology. Committed to digital literacy, the DCPL Adults Learning Department offers a myriad of free computer classes and certifications, ranging from basic computer skills, such as turning on the computer and logging in, using a keyboard effectively, demonstrating basic email functions, and using the internet. This funding will also provide the library with the resources to continue offering Grow with Google series, which instructs enrolled participants on using Google software programs. During the pandemic, our libraries, especially the MLK Memorial Library, have served an invaluable service, a resource for residents without internet access who aren't proficient in basic digital skills and lack ownership of a digital device. In the district, 1/4 of the households lack a broadband internet connection, and over 35% of these households are in Ward 5, 7, and 8. More than 63% of Black DC residents utilize mobile devices as their primary portal to the web. These statistics illustrate another reason why the DCPL's services and programs are vitally needed, especially when the mayor's FY 23 proposed budget to close the digital divide is largely reliant on federal funding from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. 2 years into the pandemic, residents most affected by the digital divide will have to wait even longer before the district is able to develop and implement a holistic district-wide master plan that addresses the access to affordable internet, digital literacy, and access to digital devices. This will likely place an additional burden on our local libraries. In recognizing the impact that the district's digital divide has on our ability to achieve an inclusive job recovery, it is essential that Council commits $800,000 to support the DCPL's adult services to continue being a digital hub for residents. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Robin Diner, Library Renaissance Project.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yep, perfect.
Hi, okay. Well, hello, everyone, council member and staff. Thank you. As always, we appreciate being heard by this committee. On Friday, in my capacity as president of the Mlk Library Friends, which is my volunteer job, I was thrilled to see our central library back in full swing for the DC History Conference. The Friends were able to recruit a lot of new members, and thanks to a wonderful collaboration with the Mount Pleasant Friends President Carlos Izurrieta and the generous ideas of DC librarian Michelle Casto of Washingtoniana and Black Studies, we had, for the first time, our own Mlk Library totes and t-shirts to sell. So it's quite exciting. But we did all agree that the Mlk Library needs a real bookstore someday. I know we just renovated the library, but we should put it on the back burner to think about. Everyone misses the bookstore that used to be in the lobby of Mlk, which was designed and donated by architect Arthur Cotton Moore. Anyway, the Friends of the Library for now have been given a room on the A level, and we will conduct book sales from there on a regular basis. We look forward to that. Also, the new cafe, Mary Ann's, was extremely popular. And I will note that when the library listening sessions of several years ago, like maybe 15 years ago, were held at the beginning of this major library transformation process, every neighborhood across the city asked for a coffee shop for their new library when it came. And now, with some 20 library transformations done, Mary Ann's is only the second cafe to have been realized. I mean, it's a great community amenity. So we hope that the rental arrangement that's had with Mary Ann's could maybe be some kind of a guide for getting more cafes into libraries that want them in the future. The Library Renaissance Project has 3 requests of the budget. We fully support Robert Oliver's comments about security. So I won't even go into that, but 100% agree with him. I have been speaking before to you, Chairman White, about activating outdoor spaces and sustainable plantings. And we know that DCPL has hired a firm to work on that. I look forward to the new reading grove at Lamond Riggs Library when it opens, and presumably that will have been designed with automatic watering in ground. Other libraries that we've built do not have that, with the exception of the Mlk roof, beautiful roof garden, which everyone should go see if they haven't. But we don't have it for the street trees. And the street trees are the responsibility of the landholder where they grow. So the library is responsible for watering trees in the tree boxes on its property. I imagine that the DCPL doesn't want to do this because they told me I couldn't do it because they're concerned about cost savings. But last year, DC's tree canopy declined after several years of incremental increase. And if cost is the issue, we should compare it with how much it costs for the city to pay for constant tree replacement when young trees die. So I just wish the library could look into this and work with me on this, and with the Urban Forestry Administration. I'm sure we can figure out something about that. And Chairman, I had asked at the Oversight hearing if you would put in a word with the library for me to meet with the firm that was hired to do an evaluation of outdoor spaces. I mean, I've talked with a lot of people in a lot of communities. We have a lot of ideas, and I think it could be worthwhile for them to hear them. And then our third ask is, please, that there be no public land giveaway. We implore the committee and the council, no public land giveaway as part of the Chevy Chase Small Area Plan. Chevy Chase is a chance to be visionary. The community there is committed to increasing affordable housing. Housing can be created on some of the land there through a land trust or as social housing to achieve the maximum amount of affordability at all levels. You know, 30% of AMI, 60% of AMI, 90, et cetera. The small area plan, as recently published, calls for a land disposition in its timeline. That means we're giving away the land. We advise strongly against that. And as part of the preliminary planning with the community, Wards 3 Vision presented a plan that co-located in one building the library and the community center, with housing built around it, but separate from it. That is a beautiful way to have the public and the private interact with a separation of pathways and gardens and so forth. Housing is being built over libraries.
Ms. Donna, we got to wrap up. I to come back to you.
Okay. My last couple sentences. We know that housing is being built over libraries in a number of places across the country, but we have had some issues at the West End. It's just a matter of unintended consequences. And so we have enough land in Chevy Chase. We should try to do them separately. Thank you. Thank you very much, Council Member, Council Chairman, Committee Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Paula Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Paula Edwards, Ward 4 and Shepard Park resident. I'd like to thank you, Chair White, for allowing me to testify today. And thanks to our libraries and their staffs for serving us so well in a trying time. We look forward to their returning to full functioning. I speak in support of the full funding of a new library in Ward 4 with the hope that it will be located at the parks at Walter Reed between Shepard Park and Brightwood Park and named for Mrs. Juanita E. Thornton. Almost 40 years ago, Mrs. Juanita E. Thornton looked at the space prepared for a Wendy's fast food franchise and saw a library instead. We have to be as forward-thinking as she was to see the advantages of moving that library to a site where it can continue to flourish into the next century. During the pandemic, our libraries were closed for long periods of time, depriving citizens of one of the blessings of our society. If those libraries had access to sufficient outdoor space where people could socially distance in the open air, they may have been able to remain open, at least partially, and perhaps to abate the pandemic achievement gaps we have recently observed. The Walter Reed campus offers that open space for reading, meeting, and study. If our experience with the pandemic has taught us anything, it is not if there will be another occurrence, but when. Failure to prepare our libraries for that eventuality would be derelict indeed. The Walter Reed campus offers other advantages as well. It can house a much larger facility than the current Juanita Thornton Library. It houses the world-renowned J-Labs and Children's Hospital research facilities where young scholars can visit and be inspired by those on the cutting edge of scientific research. Visitors can make a day of studying and shopping, much as my mother and I began our Saturdays at the Carnegie, Mellon, and Martin Luther King libraries and ended them with shopping at Hecht's, Woody's, Landsberg's, and Cahn's department stores. In that way, the retail will be a draw to the library and the library will draw shoppers to the parks. The parks will also have a public pool and a grocery store that will draw families to the site. There is parking available at Walter Reed so that visitors will have access without impacting on-street neighborhood parking as the current site does. There will be security on the campus so that patrons can feel safe in transit even in the evening, while the current site lacks any security at all. There are several public bus lines that cross the site at well-traveled intersections to allow visitors easy entry, while access to the current library is not well populated and not well lighted in the evenings. Finally, this location will enable library staff more access to running errands during their lunch hours and after work. There is no other site in Ward 4 of which I am aware that offers these unique advantages to the community. Mrs. Thornton looked forward, not backward. We who stand on her shoulders owe it to her and to the responsible stewardship of public resources to look forward as well and to learn from our experiences and to build a resilient future for our public libraries. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we elevate? So, Ms. Whitworth, have you been elevated yet? Can't see it. Someone can help me with that.
All right. Good morning, afternoon, everyone. I apologize. My name is Zena Whitworth, and I'm representing the community, as well as I am a vice president of Friends of Capitol View Library. Excuse me. I would like to reiterate what other people have noted today, that the community involvement and the library support of promoting literacy in all our branches in and around the community. Friends of Capitol View Library have successfully installed library trees with and around the Marshall Heights Northeast Southeast corridor, thanks to the supreme leadership of Iola Anion, Debbie Lewis, Pamela Jafari, and Gregory, Bertha, and Cecily, and the Friends of Capitol View. In order for this to be successful, we need the community's support in making sure that we're able to continue the flow of donations of books that goes through our bookstore located in the basement of the Capitol View Library. In addition to safety, a lot of the injuries that were reported, thank you for bringing that up at the beginning. These injuries were caused by the lack of the library to provide security. When I moved into the neighborhood 3 years ago, as an educator, I told them this is going to be problematic due to the students and lack of supervision from their parents. This is not the job of the library staff to be security or babysitters. So all we asked for was security, because you know that so others may eat, and it's a public library, everyone has access. So for the safety of the patrons and for the safety of the employees, we employed DCPL and the police department to provide adequate security round the clock. I noticed that when the COVID testing was occurring, we had multiple security, and we had 0 incidences of any type of violence or crime or disturbances. Thank God that we had COVID testing at our location. However, we would like to see that same diligence for the everyday patrons like myself, an educator that comes in and frequents the library. Also, as far as the beautification and the support of increasing funding to the library staff, because they also put on programs that need supplies. And although the French Library do an awesome job of, I apologize for the noise, although they do an awesome job of providing support, I feel like the library itself should give I guess a kitty for each library, or raise the kitty. In addition to the Malcolm X, the kiosk, I think that we should 100%, because we need more public spaces for reading and more public spaces for families to take their kids and gather. There are no outside parks in the Marshall Heights area. However, I've been looking at the Butterfly Park, and I feel like the Department of Recreation should partner with DCPL and possibly let's revitalize the Butterfly Park and let us add some more little library trees. So people, the benches are already there. All we need is to beautify it and give it some attention. We can no longer neglect our community. The weather is getting warmer. The crime is rising, but at the same time, we need to have activities and outdoor activities, outdoor plays, outdoor poetry for our youth to be engaged. I would like to see more youth engagement and more youth programming. FOCPL, and when Iola, she was on here to speak for the library, but I am speaking for myself as a community member, as an educator, that I would like to see more activities and communities for our youth and our seniors, but specifically our teenage youth. If not, as the weather gets warmer, so will the crime rise. Thank you for your time and diligence to all the matters that have been put forth by the friends of all the libraries, and to remember that we are all one group. And like I said, we have a a bookstore in Capitol View Library, and I would love to see the support of the DCPL to give us the support that we need to actually make it a thing. Last thing is, there were a lot of community people that came up and asked for, to utilize spaces like the Patels, but I don't see them giving back to the community. So how do we make them accountable when they say that they're going to come and help the community, but they don't provide the spaces that they promised at meetings? So I would like to follow up on that as well. But we need to unite and provide more spaces, because we need more space for my library, actually, because it's actually our bookstore is getting full. But support all of the library trees that the Friends of Capitol View Library was able to install and put up.
Thank you,
you
Ms.
for your time.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Ms. Banfield, you discussed, I guess, several programs regarding the digital classes. What are some of the certifications you are looking for DCPL to serve?
Are you talking to me?
So, Banfield.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay. I know you're talking about the digital classes.
Yes, the digital classes offered at the MLK Library.
And you're talking about expanding that to other locations.
It would be great if, so I have a couple, it would be great to know how many people are actually being served by the MLK library that live in other parts of the district. And if they're traveling for further distances to be able to take advantage of those training programs. I know that these programs aren't offered at all libraries. And so, it would be great to either expand to the libraries that would definitely benefit from those services, particularly if their residents are traveling outside. So residents from Ward 7 or Ward 8 or Ward 5 are traveling all the way into Center City to take advantage of those classes. The ones that I mentioned in my testimony are, to my knowledge, are only offered at the MLK Library.
Okay. And are these certifications
yeah,
the classes, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, so they offer a range of services and programs, from very basic literacy to the Google Grow, which is a program that folks can't just walk in and sign up for. They have to enroll, so there's a start and end time for those programs. But they also offer certifications. I don't know the exact names of the certifications, but it is in addition to the Google Grow. And so they are offering a range of programming from one end of the spectrum to the other. For the individual that has very little proficiency, basic skills that they need to know to be able to provide, to be able to operate and use a device and the internet, to those that do have those skills and basic proficiency and want to take advantage of advanced training. And that's operated in-house within the library. And I want to also add, which I didn't include in my testimony, is that the library also administers the North Star Literacy Assessment test, which actually is their ability to gauge where that individual falls on the spectrum in terms of what they need to learn if they're starting from basic, or if they know enough to be able to enroll in some of these other programs.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm gonna jump to Ms. Edwards. I guess we were thinking, from my staff's perspective, that Walter Reed is not much farther south than Shepard Park's current library. How does this help Brightwood Park or Manor Park's suggested need for a library, if at all?
The distance is still an issue, I think, but the advantages are so outweigh the distances. I mean, if there could be a shuttle bus from Brightwood Park, I just don't think you can build another library with all the advantages that are intrinsic to Walter Reed. In order to build a library with all those advantages, you'd have to spend probably $50 to $100 million. So I think as far as resources are concerned, if you could spend the money on a shuttle bus for kids to go directly, for kids or adults or whoever, to go directly to the library, it would be worth the money. And I just don't think you can build your way into something that's going to parallel Walter Reed.
Yeah, it's a massive project with a massive investment. Okay.
Thank you,
Ms. Diner. Ms. Diner.
Yes.
What is the Ward 3 community's response to potential co-locating library in Chevy Chase, if you know, especially in regards to your thoughts about affordable housing?
The community very, very strongly wants as much affordable housing as can reasonably be fit into the site, which is the site of the library and the community center and some tennis courts and some parking that's there now. It's like a 3-block area that's part of the small area plan along Connecticut Avenue. And one big block is the library and the Rex community center. So all that we're saying is they could be co-located on top of each other, you know, with basement level, with rooftop tennis courts. I mean, all kinds of things. Architects love to do this. And it was already presented. Several plans were presented. But that one by the Ward 3 Vision, who are, you know, very much for increased density, increased affordability, good transit, which that site has some transit. But the community, yes, they're behind affordability. It's a question of how exactly does it get achieved. And if I may just say one thing, Chair, about all this discussion about planning and including the community. I've been involved in a lot of these for 20 years now, and overwhelmingly I find the planning is kind of based on ideas or even deals that the city has in mind, and they don't seem to get to the heart of what real communities want oftentimes. And I would suggest that DCPL, which is an independent agency, it's not like the rest of the agencies that are funded by the city and by the executive and by the council. It has an independent status. It has its own contracting authority, and it is trusted and beloved institution. And maybe it would be worthwhile for the Board of Trustees and you, Chair, this committee, ANC commissioners who are involved, to do the work initially, preliminarily, of deciding what is wanted for the libraries, and then sending that up to the Office of Planning and others, so that there's not so much friction and people butting heads, because I think in the end, it would be possible to give people what they want, but the city needs to be clear on what it is. That's just my suggestion. I think DCPL is unique, that they might be able to provide this kind of early level planning better than any other agency.
Got it. I think the facilities plan is part of that, but I'm hearing a common theme about lack of community engagement across different areas throughout the city. You talked about a firm that did the outdoor spaces, but I missed the name in your testimony. If you can get that to us, we'll ask about that during our questions to the director.
Okay, thank you.
You also about there's always some issues at the West End, but you didn't speak to what those issues are.
The issues are, like I said, it's sort of unintended consequences. So, for instance, this is now at the West End, it's luxury housing. Okay, there's no affordable housing in that development over our public library. And it so happened that Vice President Kamala Harris lived there when she was running for office. And it's great, in my view, that she was a neighbor, but the security had to be tightened and you had to submit to being kind of like searched when you went in. I mean, yeah, that's a weird little thing, but because it was private residence over the public library, the safety and security of everything had to be included. It would not have happened if no one was living over the library. Here's another thing, it's a little weird, but it ties into our use of outdoor spaces. There is a glassed in kind of outdoor space, except it's glassed in at the back of the library that adjoins on one side the private residence. This space has remained unused for all the time that the new West End Library has been open because no one can figure out how to protect the safety and security of the private building from possible intrusions by members of the public who might wander into their lobby from the public little enclosed garden space. So, I mean, it sounds stupid, but it's just a little thing that we can't fix because of the public-private relationship.
Got it. Let me check my time here. I'm over time. I do have a few questions, but I'm gonna try to jump to Ms. Whitworth real quick. You talked about the butterfly park. I've seen you mention it in the comments as well. Can you speak to what that looks like and your thoughts about it?
Yeah, and I mean, I literally just drove by there. I feel like from the time that it was put up there, that it just needs a school or like we had an art project to do our little library trees, to have a day of painting where we could just go over and paint and make the butterflies bright again, and then make that a center location literally for everyone to come together. Because think about it, it is a park, it is a circle, it is a big reading circle. So if we, there used to be a little library tree there, but of course, lack of maintenance and, it was destroyed. However, if we set the message that, hey, that literacy matters in this area by maybe putting maybe 3 little library trees there and paint the benches and make it a place where families could come, maybe put a fountain nearby, or even just add just simple, people can put their lawn chairs out. These are some of the things that Mr. Patel, who owns half that building on Central Avenue, said that he was willing to get involved with when we give him the permit to have his sister's dentistry there. But they said that they would, share that space to bring communities together so that we can work together as a coalition, because we do have an East of the River coalition with the Deanwood and Dorothy, all of the libraries on East of the River. We formulated a coalition to make it better over here. And I feel like everything happens at Butterfly Park. They just met to have a bike marathon. So let's, put up a bike rack there. We can put a bike rack there, and the book between the bike rack, painting the benches, painting the butterflies, making them brighter, providing literature about butterflies, because it is a nature spot as well. I mean, that would do a lot to enhance our community overall.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for testifying today. I'm pretty sure Director Reyes is listening in today. And so we will begin to get some closure, some understanding as we continue to engage the community and do what needs to be done to move DC Public Libraries forward. I want to thank you all for joining us today. We'll move forward with our government witnesses if we can bring them into the panel. We're going to take about 1 minute and 30 seconds to get set up before we begin swearing in and open the testimony. Thank you guys. Have a blessed day. Ready to go? Yep. I see we have a number of government witnesses here. As you all know, it is the practice of this office to swear in all government witnesses, so you can cut your screen on and your mic on. It'd be helpful. And we can begin by raising your right hand. You swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give today is the truth and nothing but the truth. You could say, I do.
I
Or
do.
yes.
I do.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Executive Director Richard Reyes Gavilan, if you can start with testimony, that'd be beautiful.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, Councilmember White and members of the Committee on Recreation, Libraries, and Youth Affairs and committee staff. Can you all hear me okay? I am Richard Reyes Gavilan. I'm the Executive Director of the DC Public Library. I'm pleased to submit testimony this afternoon regarding Mayor Bowser's proposed fiscal year 2023 budget. I'd like to thank you, Council Member, for your ongoing support of the DC Public Library. I'd also like to thank Mayor Bowser and her team for the proposed FY23 budget, which demonstrates a real understanding of the enduring value libraries have in their communities. I offer appreciation to the Board of Library Trustees under the leadership of our new chair, Tony Williams, for its oversight and guidance, and to the supporters and advocates of the library, including the Friends Groups of the DC Public Library and the DC Public Library Foundation. As always, I save my final acknowledgements for the staff of the DC Public Library, who continue to adjust to a new way of working while always prioritizing the needs of district residents. And thank you, by the way, for recognizing that this is National Library Week, and a week that we take some extra time to think about all the great work that library workers do in DC and across the country. Speaking specifically to the FY23 operating budget, overall, the mayor's proposed FY23 budget of $77 million is a 2% increase over the FY22 budget. This proposed budget includes 32 additional FTEs for some of the library's most pressing priorities, 22 FTEs to continue to expand hours of service at all of our neighborhood libraries, allowing us to operate as we did pre-pandemic. Residents are especially looking forward to the potential of additional evening hours at all of our libraries. Closing at 9 p.m. instead of at 8 p.m. will allow for more community meetings, more study sessions, more affinity group meetings, and the like. The funding also allows the library to maintain the robust virtual programming that has proven so popular throughout every stage of the pandemic. 5 FTEs to expand our Peer Navigator program. Peer Navigators, who are individuals with a lived experience of homelessness, interact with library patrons who may be unhoused or at risk of being unhoused, offering them a host of services that might include assistance with job applications, referrals to medical assistance, accompaniment to appointments, and more. Under the leadership of the library's full-time social worker, the Peer Navigators have been instrumental in helping residents who turn to libraries because they don't know where else to turn. Importantly, the budget includes $7,000 for things like transportation to get clients to intake appointments with partner agencies, and for care kits that might include things like new socks or hygiene products. 5 FTEs to maintain a Digital Navigator program that is launching this year with the help of one-time federal American Rescue Plan Act funding. Digital Navigators will provide one-on-one on-demand technology assistance to residents who may not have time or ability to attend a formal class. The Digital Navigators will do everything from basic device troubleshooting to helping residents with software issues, to filling out forms and applications, and to referring residents to appropriate agencies for further support. We are pleased that the proposed budget provides funding to support the selection of locations for new libraries to replace Northwest 1 and Rosedale, and for Ward 4 Library. The site selection funding, which was very helpful in determining the St. Elizabeth site for our new library in Congress Heights to replace Parklands Turner, will help us in the smart and timely project management of the new libraries funded in the capital improvement plan. Moving on to the capital improvement plan, I should say it provides continued funding to support the design and construction of new Chevy Chase, Deanwood, Northwest 1, and Rosedale libraries, as well as libraries in Congress Heights and in Ward 4. In addition, the capital improvement plan includes an additional $4 million for the new library in Congress Heights that will bring the total project budget up to $24.3 million and in line with the budgets for similar library projects. A total of $800,000 for opening day collections for Chevy Chase, Deanwood, Northwest 1, and Congress Heights. $2.1 million for IT infrastructure improvements in existing and new libraries. $1.2 million in maintenance of our building systems and other building infrastructure improvements. This represents a $500,000 decrease from this year's budget. The decrease leaves $500,000 in FY24 and $750,000 in FY25, in addition to our existing balance, most of which will be dedicated to a significant refresh, of our Shaw Library as dictated by the DC Public Library Facilities Master Plan Ex Libris. The ability to do more interior and exterior improvements will be compromised without additional general improvements dollars in the out years of the 6-year capital improvements plan. Thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to provide this brief testimony. I'm joined by members of the library's executive management team, as well as our agency fiscal officer, and we welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Director. Before we get into some budget matters, there were a number of concerns from ANCs, community leaders, and some of our partners. We can start off with some of those real quick. I know one of the latest ones was about the organization a firm that did the outdoor spaces. I don't know if he was listening to that. I know, who was it?
Ms. Diener?
Ms. Diener wanted to have a meeting with them, with someone from your office. And I don't know if that's possible, but I know she asked about it a few months ago, and was going to reach out about it, but she mentioned it again today. Are you aware of that?
I know that Ms. Diener and many of our residents care about the landscaping and care about the environment and care about outdoor areas surrounding libraries, as do we. We've got a landscaping firm. We've got trained maintainers who are responsible for the library's exterior spaces. Beyond that, we are always willing and looking forward to doing better by talking to people who are in this line of work. Obviously, we go out to bid every several years to bring on new people to help us out. So I'm not sure if I've got anything else to say regarding that, council member.
Do you have anyone from your staff that's going to be reaching out to her specifically? Like I guess that's what she asked.
We're obviously, Ms. Diener is a longtime ally of the library, and we talk to her all the time regarding this. I believe we've talked about maybe the tree boxes outside the MLK Library. I'm not sure if that's what she's referring to. And again, those are things that we have had ongoing conversations with about different strategies, and I'm sure we will have more of them.
So you said yes, someone will be reaching out to her. I mean, you're speaking around it. I'm not sure what yours.
No. Again, we've spoken about this many times, council member, and we will. We're happy to reach out again and talk about the library's strategy for maintaining its property, and then those properties that are adjacent to the libraries.
Got it. There is some conversation around a line item in the budget for a library. And I guess one of the commissioners testified there should be some conversation also around 4D library. I think it was about $25 million allocated towards that space. Do you have any insight on that?
Sure, council member. The only insight I can offer, and I should thank Commissioner Israel for hosting me at the ANC 4D meeting a couple of weeks ago. I was happy to go into a bit more detail about the library's thinking right now. But so much of the witness testimony that you heard this morning was about the library's facilities master plan, which was a plan that was published at the end of 2020, indicating some of the library's best thinking around how to grow and change and adapt the physical campus for the next 10, 15 years. The specific recommendations made within that plan. So for example, the plan to possibly relocate Shepard Park rather than renovating it or rather than rebuilding it, possibly looking at moving it further south to better serve, not necessarily be in the Brightwood Park community, but possibly better serve the Brightwood Park community. These are studies that are still needing to be done. And I just want to emphasize that the funding for any change in this plan kicks in FY27, which means that we are several years away from having any sort of meaningful insight into what is possible. And the other thing that I think I've spoken to you, council member, about, this also gives us time to examine what changes the pandemic has had on people's behavior, especially with institutions like libraries and other public spaces that they use voluntarily. I want to make sure that we don't jump the gun, and we should take advantage of every minute of time that we have to decide what is best. So back to the idea of, again, yes, the facilities plan certainly makes mention of a service gap that we noticed in the Brightwood Park community. We postulate possibly moving the Shepard Park Library. We're not saying that it can be done. We also say that, there's got to be a lot of broad community support from the council, support from the mayor for us to do this. But in any way that you look at it, we are not anywhere close to making any sorts of decisions. And maybe I should also state, some frustration that has been communicated around community engagement. This 10, 15-year plan that we publish has a lot of ideas, and we're not going to have community engagement around every single idea in the first year of the plan. We think it's probably better to do the engagement a little bit closer to when it's time to start making some decisions. Obviously, giving the community every opportunity to make its opinions heard, but you can certainly understand that we can't do a ton of community engagement around projects that are in 24, 25, and 27, all in the first year of the plan's existence, especially during the pandemic. But we are committed, as I've said before, to community engagement, and I think we've seen that with the Parkland Sterner replacement, and we will see that in Deanwood because that is coming online in the funding comes online in FY23, and we will see that with every project that we've got coming up.
Got it. I guess one of the other concerns was about expanding this butterfly park. Is there any appetite from DCPL to do that?
I did hear that, council member. I'm not familiar with the butterfly park, but this is one of the things that we would be happy to get back to you after the hearing and let you know our thoughts. I actually don't even know where Butterfly Park is.
Got it. Ms. Banfield talked about expanding the digital classes. The DCPL offers she talked about an array of certifications and programs that you all have. What is the thought behind expansion of these programs in our DC libraries?
Sure. So it was made mention that the MLK Library has an adult learning center, and this is a very large space on the second floor of the new library with dedicated staff. And we do have certification classes. It was made mention that we do the North Star literacy assessments. We do Microsoft Office certifications as well. And, you know, we're very fortunate to have a library as big as the MLK Library. That's also so easy to get to for so many residents, where we can sort of centralize a lot of these things. You know, we are always looking to provide more services directly into neighborhoods and branches. I should say that I'm really excited about, you know, one of the staffing enhancements that the mayor has put in her preliminary budget is the Digital Navigators. And these folks who we are actually currently hiring with American Rescue Plan Act funds. These ambassadors can be very helpful in what I heard some of our public witnesses talk about. You know, people who can do on-the-spot training, whether it's help me with a device, help me with filling out a form, help me with understanding some software. And those navigators are going to be a lot more nimble than a space at the MLK Library. But, and now going back to what Mr. Oliver was talking about, and that is the idea of having more emerging technologies in locations outside of the MLK Library. Again, the MLK Library is 400,000 square feet, so we're really fortunate as a city to have such a well-sized and accessible hub in downtown DC. But as we are doing in the Southwest Library, and hopefully more and more as we continue to recede from the pandemic, we will be looking to introduce more of these emerging technologies in places where there is a demonstrated need. But I am thankful that these topics are being raised.
I'm glad you mentioned MLK Library. There was a lot of discrepancies over the naming. Where are we with that for the public?
Excuse me, thank you. So council member, as I told you back in February, during the oversight hearing, the library needs to change its policy around the naming of interior spaces, and that is moving along well. We have had several sessions, including community sessions with our friends groups, with our staff. We've got an online survey where we have just been collecting ideas from residents about how they think that we should recognize donors, how we should honor people in the library system. And I think people have been very pleased with the fact that the library has taken a step back. We are not naming anything for anyone until we reevaluate this process. We hope to have a new policy adopted by the Board of Trustees at our July meeting, after which we can take a fresh look at how we start naming again. You might be on mute, council member.
Got it. During the performance oversight hearing as well, it was discussed that a rental space fee was being charged, and the fee prevented the organizations from hosting its events. Can you elaborate on when fees are charged for using space at the library and where the fee for rental space has been useful?
Yeah, for sure. So we charge for spaces that don't follow the library's established meeting room policy. So the library has a meeting room policy that allows individuals to have meetings in spaces for 2 hours, provided that they are open to the public and some other factors. We rent spaces if people have needs for, let's say, an all-day private event, and we have rental fees in order to make those spaces as accessible as we can. Now, we understand, council member, that that the fees that we have put in place in the very first year of the existence of this program are not set in stone. One of the things that we have committed to doing, and we will be doing in the next couple of months, is that we are revisiting our entire event rental system, including our staffing, including our fees, and looking at ways in which we can improve it. I think that there are opportunities for us to make our spaces more equitable, especially for nonprofit organizations who we know we want to use the space. We just want to be fair. And so we will be making some changes there, but in a nutshell, we charge now for anything that goes beyond the meeting room rental policy that exists for the library system at the moment.
Got it. In your testimony, you mentioned in the FY23 budget that it has I guess 1.2 million in maintenance for building systems increase, and other infrastructure improvements that had a $500,000 decrease. I guess what could restoring the $500,000 funds do in the capital budget?
Well, as part of our facilities master plan, council member, we did a condition assessment for a lot of the component parts of our buildings. So everything from elevator parts to air handlers to boilers, fire alarm systems. You know, these are the things that we want to replace on a schedule and doing it frequently in order that our buildings remain in the best repair possible. A reduction in funding to our maintenance budget basically creates a scenario of some deferred maintenance. And you know, in a perfect world, that's what we would be looking to avoid. So it is not about the inability to do some major infrastructure projects, but it does impact some of the smaller things that take place behind the scenes that allow our buildings to work at their best level.
Got it. From the budget book, page D36, federal resources. It's looking like federal grant shows a negative 52.3% change from FY22. I'm not sure if this is because the amount of money we got through the federal government through the pandemic. There's a significant decrease in this line item. If you can speak to that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, council member. That 52% decrease is about the removal of the $1 million FY22 ARPA grants, as well as $250,000 for something that is not ARPA related, but is federally funded, called the Memory Lab grant.
Got it. I guess also going down to D37, there are several negative percentage changes as well. Property management, 284% change. Customer service, 382% change. And I guess performance management, 226% change. Can you speak to these as well?
Sure, council member. Without going into really probably too much detail, in the last few years, we've added some new departments to the library in a form of restructuring. I think maybe very one that I think is recognizable to all of us is this new department to help us manage our events. And so as we have created these new departments, we've had basically some budget alignments. There have been no reductions in staff. It's really just a realignment of our budget to reflect the existing organizational chart.
I'll come back to that. I'm not totally clear on that, but I'll jump back to that.
I can give it another try if you want. It's basically we've moved staff within budget items to reflect their work in some new departments that we've created in the library system. It doesn't necessarily mean that what was happening is no longer happening, but the—
Give me one second.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. You heard a lot of concerns today about public safety in and around libraries. And I did notice in the budget, where is it? Line L420 is 3.7 million. FY23 for public safety line item is 3.4 million, a difference of almost 280,000. Can you discuss the difference and your vision to ensure that pedestrians at least have safety measures in place at these libraries, which you heard from several different people across the city?
Sure, council member. And again, in this particular instance, we're talking about an administrative change so that we are not talking about fewer public safety officers or fewer resources devoted to public safety, rather a shift in the budget from public safety to neighborhood services. And that is just an internal thing. We actually have now about 35 FTE in public safety, which is about as high as we've had in all my time in DC, now over 8 years. You know, in terms of our public safety vision, one of the public witnesses, I might believe it was Mr. Oliver, referred to our new director of public safety, Mr. Morency. He's got a lot of experience and he's coming at public safety from the perspective of sort of community care. And our goal for public safety is not to be, you know, we don't want to punish people. We don't want to create barriers to participation with the library. We want to give people what they need in an environment that's as safe as humanly possible. So we appreciate that philosophy that Mr. Morency has brought to us at DC Public Library. And, you know, we will continue to address safety needs as they occur. For now, I think we're actually doing a good job, not with just our public safety officers, but bear in mind that the addition of things like peer navigators also help the public safety environment in our libraries. A lot of the public safety issues, frankly, have to do with maybe mental health issues and things of that nature. And our peer navigators are very helpful in better handling and better directing some things that could potentially be issues to other agencies for handling. So I'm comfortable with where we are now. We would never be shy to ask for additional resources for public safety. We know that that is a right for all of our staff and all of our residents who come into our buildings. Again, I think that we're doing a good job, and we are always willing to make changes if we see that need is prevalent.
Thank you. We are also joined by my Ward 4 colleague, Councilmember Janice Lewis-George.
Thank you, Chairman White, and good afternoon, Director Reyes. It's good to see you.
Hi, Councilmember.
How you doing?
My throat is very hoarse. I don't know why, but anyway.
That was me 2 days ago. So want to get started on a few things. Let's talk Ward 4 for a second here. I see there's an $85,000 enhancement in the DC PL budget to support site selection for new libraries. Can you provide a breakdown for this? Which libraries does this cover? What's included in this amount? And does it also include community engagement as a part of that?
Great. So just a little bit of background. A few years ago, we asked for and received approximately that amount of money to do a site selection for our new Congress Heights Library, replacing the Parklands Turner branch in Ward 8. And that was a really indispensable study in that it helped us more or less turn over every rock within a half-mile radius of the existing location. It did include some community engagement and included conversations with stakeholders such as yourself and other sort of shakers in the community to help us think through what our best approach would be to a new library. We anticipate now that this money has been put in our budget in a recurring way. so that we can address new libraries one by one. So based on the existing CIP, that $85 million would allow us to begin work in FY23 for the Northwest One Library, which funding comes in FY24 for Northwest One. So the 85,000 in FY23 would allow us, would help us with the site selection. And then moving on the next year, 85,000 for Rosedale. And then I guess a couple of years past that, we would have that site selection money for the new Ward 4 library, whether it is, again, rebuilding Shepard Park, whether it's moving it, that's what that would do for that project.
Okay, so the way, okay, I appreciate that. So the way the enhancement works at this moment is it's for whatever library is in the upcoming capital improvement plan, it's sort of the precursor to any of our sort of upcoming libraries. And so that means for a library like our 4A, a new library in Ward 4, you won't start that process for several years. So
until FY26, that's right.
Oh, wow. Okay. Is there any way to start it earlier so we don't miss out on, I guess, potential locations?
I mean, the short answer is
no.
Well, it's not that we're not listening, council member, to opportunities that may exist.
Yeah.
But in terms of the ability to spend it wisely and put the dedicated sort of, intellectual force behind it, that's our approach would be to do it in advance of when the funded library project is coming on board. I should say that the projects as funded in the CIP were funded in such a way that the library could manage them in a sensible way, so that we don't have too many projects doing the same things in one given fiscal year. And that compromises our ability to project manage something in a way that we are comfortable with. And that's why we have these projects staggered sort of, one after another, rather than all at the same time. Of course, I should say that because we are committed to rebuilding our libraries as part of other citywide projects, especially with the emphasis on affordable housing, sometimes the timeline is a little bit out of our hands. So for example, the Chevy Chase Library, we have funding coming up in FY23, and it's hard to say when the timeline for that building is, because we are committed to working with DemPed and others in order to build a library within a mixed-use facility. But that said, if we have control over the project, the site selection money, it works best for us the year before. But we are always listening to good ideas. If there's something that we really want to strike while the iron is hot, then we absolutely that we should do that.
Okay. I want to. Okay, so well, that informs some of my work moving forward on how this works. In the previous capital plan, fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 27, all 25 million for the new 4A library was in the fiscal year 2027. And then this year's budget, 4.3 million is in the fiscal year 20, I guess, is in fiscal year 27, and 20.7 million is in fiscal year 28. What happened there is the library delayed a year. And also, I guess, well, I don't need to ask you, the current budget include potential land acquisition costs, because that, I guess, comes when you do the enhancement. So just to those questions, what happened there? Is there a library delay, or was it a matter of balancing the budget book and the debt ceiling that looks that way?
I think that the goal was to have the entire authority within the FY22 to 27 CIP, but obviously we don't expend $27 million in the first year of the budget. So we knew that part of that authority would be pushed out to 28. The first year of the budget is where we spend the least. That's where we spend most of our design monies. So it doesn't change anything in terms of the project. If the project is starting, if the funding comes in at FY27, $4 million in FY27 is plenty to do the design work. It's only during the construction phase of the project. So in this case, it would be probably 29, 30. That's where we need the bulk of those funds. 28, 29, 30.
Okay, so so that's
It
what I'm
doesn't change
thinking.
anything.
Okay, so it doesn't change anything. And the enhancement funds are not designed, like they're not for designs. Those are for like down payments or?
I'm sorry, I don't follow, council member.
Well, because I'm trying to understand sort of the process here. It sounds like if for the new Ward 4 library, right? When it comes to where we are, I guess, scheduled fiscal year 2027, that means we should see the same enhancement we see right now for the Northwest 1 library. We'll see an 85,000 enhancement theoretically, but the year before that library to get started. That enhancement is separate. That's the, I don't know.
That's an operating.
That's operating, and that's
Correct.
for site selection.
Correct.
And then the rest of that beginning 4.3 we're talking about, that's going to be in our design phase infrastructure
That's
element.
That is capital, correct.
And that would be in our capital place.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying I understand the difference. I just wanted to see if there was any in that enhancement piece, what of it needs to be considered for us to get to design.
And good question that it does not include. So these budgets, we've only ever rebuilt on city property. So these budgets would not include site acquisition. We very much hope that we will be rebuilding. Obviously, if it happens to be on the site of the Shepard Park Library, then we don't have to worry about site acquisition. Did I say site acquisition?
Yeah.
Anyway, so if it happens to be property that has to be land that has to be purchased, we would need to come back to the city and you all for some additional funding.
So I'm in a position where I'm going to have to fight for additional funding for Brightwood Park specifically. And so I guess that's why I'm getting into the nitty gritty of these questions here, because there's still going to be a gap if we don't address sort of what we saw in the next Libra study, the master facilities plan. We'll still have that gap in Brightwood Park. And so I'm just trying to get a sense of what's necessary to be secured in the budget for Brightwood Park to at least even have sort of some type of library facility there. When you all do co-location, so for example, if you add affordable housing to a library, or if we were to sort of go in and ask for like an American Job Center, DOES, how does that work as far as factoring in where the initial funding comes out of? Obviously, you all have the capital budget, but how do you factor in housing production trust fund dollars or other agency dollars to bring such those things together?
Basically, the library itself doesn't factor in things like housing production trust fund monies. What we say is that the money that is in the library's budget is what we can contribute to the overall costs of the project, provided that we get everything that is within our scope. So that 24 million has to fund, 20,000 square feet with a separate entrance, separate children's, all that stuff. That's what it has to fund.
Okay.
But we don't dabble in the overall costs for the
other pieces. Okay.
For the other pieces. Yeah, we work with DEMPED. We defer to DEMPED. We just have our specific program that has to be funded with the amount of money that we've got in the.
Okay. When is DC Public Library hoping to be done with the 4A library? Then based on that, it's based on what we have in the budget right now, it would be in 2028, 29.
I'll tell you, I've got a little cheat sheet right here. Project completion would be 2032. So this is everything. Yeah, it's reopening, and that includes community engagement, design, and
Right.
and building.
Wow, okay, that's a problem. But that's my round is up this time. I'll come back on a few issues in my next round. Thank you, Chairman White.
Thank you. We're also joined by our at-large colleague, Councilmember Christina Henderson.
Good afternoon, Chairman. How are you?
Good, great. How are you? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Good afternoon, Director, and to your team. I wanted to start talking about collections. You know, we have some substantial money in the CIP for facility to finish off the renovation of libraries, which I know is part of the conversation you were having with Councilmember Lewis George. And yeah, we see a decrease in the collections budget by 1.5 million. Now I know that 1.5 million that we put in last year was one-time money and it wasn't converted to recurring. I asked the mayor's budget director about this, and the response I received was that the collections budget already has a high balance. Could you talk about the balance in the collections line and how you all plan to spend it in the next year or two now that MLK is open and all the libraries are reopened, et cetera?
Great, thank you, Council Member. And yes, you're right about everything. We do have a healthy collections balance. And the reason we have a healthy balance at this point is largely due to expenditures that we didn't feel comfortable making during the pandemic because physical use of our libraries has been, you know, it's still down by about 75%. We still see it coming up, but visits have been way down. So it allowed us to expend a lot in ebooks, but that didn't necessarily, that didn't account for our entire authority. So we have a plan right now that we're happy to share to be spending in this fiscal year about $8 million of our $12 million authority. And that is what our balance is.
Wait, your balance is $12 million right now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So we are, we should be good for the next couple of years. And I should say that going back to the capital plan, we are thankful that the mayor's put opening day collections dollars in all of our new library projects. And that's something that in the past, we would often have to ask the council to help us out with. So we do have $800,000 of collections in 4 upcoming capital projects.
Okay. How do you guys make the determinate? Well, you know what? That's a more philosophical question. Let's just stay on the budget because I was going to ask, how do you decide between ebook versus physical? But I think I have another hearing, so I'm going to stick to my plan here. I was pleased to see the increase of 3.2 million and 30.5 FTEs in the neighborhood libraries. Will this allow us to restore hours at all locations back to pre-pandemic levels?
Yeah, actually specific to pre-MLK closure levels in 2017. So we did adjust hours for the MLK closure because we had staff that we moved all around the city. But I don't want to overcomplicate things. The answer to your question is yes. It gets us to pre-pandemic service levels. And I think going back to your concern from the oversight hearing, the 9 p.m. closures, giving community groups, civic associations, the like, that additional hour, that is funded in this new, in the mayor's proposed budget.
Oh, that's great. So for any of those who are listening from the ANC groups, et cetera, can start your engines, I guess, on trying to reserve.
I hope so. I hope so. I don't know how comfortable people have gotten on this platform, but in all seriousness, you know, I think one of our jobs in libraries is to see, and I've talked to you about this, council member, you know, how have our behaviors changed and what changes have that wrought for us in libraries? And are we compelled then to act on those changes for better or worse? So I am hoping that people will begin knocking on our doors again to schedule meetings and things will get back to where they were and even greater. But I think that remains to be seen. However, it is funded.
Okay. I mean, yes, I think in terms of level of comfort again, but for places like MLK Library, where not a lot of people have even been in to see the new things, right? In terms of like the Makers Lab or the recording studio. Oh, what's the thing? You can rent tools, like the 3D printing, all of these different pieces I feel like are new to the public. And so once folks figure out that these services are being offered, they'll make their way.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing. I mean, we didn't want to get too far ahead of offering programs that people weren't going to be using.
Right.
And some of the training that takes place down in our creative labs requires, frankly, people to be in close proximity.
Right.
But we're very hopeful that that we're seeing a change. And I should say this week, we're really thrilled to begin reintroducing indoor public programming to our youngest residents. So the Birth to 5 set will resume coming to story time, I hope. But we're going to be watching. Yeah. There's a lot of monitoring for us to do as we continue to roll out indoor programs.
Okay. Let me ask, as we're talking about MLK and services, is the passport office still set to open mid-month?
April 27th, I think, is the date that we've got lined up for that.
Okay.
Or 28th, I'm sorry.
Can you just let us know whenever the link is live for people to reserve time? Because I think it's appointment only, correct?
I don't actually remember that, but I'm sure somebody will text me the answer to that question before we're done talking.
Okay. Okay. In last year's approved funding for our FY23, there was $500,000 that was allocated for general improvements. And now that money has been zeroed out. So what does this mean in terms of the library's ability to invest in small capital projects for facilities?
It compromises it somewhat. And this question came up before you jumped on, I think. It doesn't impact our ability to do sort of major small cap projects like the renovation of Shaw and things of that nature, but it can lead to a deferred maintenance issue with things like boilers that our FMP says should be swapped out in FY24. If we can't do it in 24 and we have to push to 25, there's just the added risk of having life cycle issues with some of our components that we would rather not have.
Right.
It's possible that you wouldn't see it, but it's possible that you might.
Okay, so that's general improvements. Does this budget include maintenance money for facilities?
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of maintenance, in terms of like custodial contracts and that sort of thing?
Maintenance in terms of like, I don't know, the elevator went out.
Yeah. That's all. Yes, this is all part of that budget. And that would be an example of the elevator went out because there was a component that, maybe we should have replaced last year and didn't get replaced.
Okay, I want to watch that because I think that the piling up deferred maintenance issues is how our libraries got to the state that they were before we started renovating all of them. And we also see that happen with our schools as well and other just general, facility issues. The longer you put stuff off, the more expensive it is to fix in the long run. And then you have to do all of these various things.
Drop in only, by the way, for the passport office, it's drop in.
Oh, okay. Okay. In the budget books, I noticed that there was a reduction of $206,000 within the public service technology. Can you explain what this is?
Yes, that was one-time funding for a website enhancement that we're in the process of doing. So it is not an overall reduction to any recurring dollars.
Okay. Do you have any other equipment needs that we haven't covered?
No, I don't think so. We're in good shape. I was just talking to a colleague a little while ago. We are buying a new sorting machine for books that come into the library, which is a very cool thing. Will ultimately help us out with getting books in bins quicker and delivered to libraries faster. Will save us on staffing as well.
Yep.
Once it's installed, we'll come invite you to come check it out. State of the art.
You're gonna do a christening for your sorter for your.
We'll
sorter?
do. I'll cut a ribbon for anything, just about.
Okay. In my last few seconds here, I wanted to ask about the Beyond. Ooh.
Beyond the Book?
Yes, the Beyond the Book program. Is that automatic for families transitioning from books to birth, or do you have to opt in?
There is a registration for families to get automatic information about the program. So no, it is not that everyone from the age of 5 gets in. Obviously, so much of the public programming that we're doing from Beyond the Book, so all the take and make kits and everything that we're doing around the system, that is open to everyone within it's open to everyone within the age group. But there is a registration process that we ask families to participate in.
Okay. All right. I had a friend who was like, wait, what happens when she turns 5? Do the books just stop? I was like, that's how it's designed. That they have this new part.
But yeah, she should join that, because there's a lot that I think that moms and dads of people who are 5 and 6 years old don't realize that the library is doing. I've got to say that these kits are super popular. It's things that kids can do in the library, but more importantly, they can take home and do it with their parents on a snowy day or a rainy day. And it's pretty great. I mean, it's the funding that we were provided for this program is not insignificant, and I think that the ramifications are that people are pretty happy with what we're getting.
Okay, thank you. I'm over time. Thank you, Chairman White.
Thank you. Great questions. So I'm gonna jump back real quick about some clarity needed in some of the budget items. I noticed that in line 460, I guess that's 460, administrative operations. There's a new for $457,000. Can you elaborate on what that new funding is? If you and your staff can speak to that.
Yes. So this is again, this is a new department that we've created to better manage the library's key business function. So this includes managing our credit card program, managing our risk management program. So being that sort of the liaison to ORM, and then also managing agency supplies. So we've got four FTE in this department that were just moved around from other administrative agencies within the library system.
Okay, and where would this be housed?
Here at the Mlk Library.
Okay. There were also 3 significant changes to chief librarian. And I see new increases in strategic planning, events, exhibits, and development, and customer experience. With a total of 11 new FTEs. Can you expound on how that helps us get to our goals as a library? These changes.
Yes, council member, and I should say that some of these positions were given to the library as part of the operating impact on capital when the Mlk Library opened. And again, in these instances, some of these positions had to be re-budgeted to fall under the right budget line. The strategic planning department is one that helps us both with our planning as well as all of our performance metrics. So working with the city's performance plan team on making sure that we are creating goals and that those goals have some metrics attached to them. The events and exhibitions department, we've talked about that as well. That's managing everything from all of the space rentals to the great art programs that we've got at Mlk and around the city, and all of the revenue generating activities, sort of such as the passport office. And then finally, our customer experience department includes all the things that we're trying to do to make sure that we're being responsive to the needs of residents and also better understanding the needs of our staff and how to align those two to create a better experience for the people that either work or use the library.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not sure. I heard, I think Councilmember Christina Henderson talk about us increasing the number of FTEs to get back to our normal hours. And I think you spoke to even pre-MLK hours. What are those hours?
I knew you were going to ask me that. It's roughly, I believe, 66 hours a week at MLK, and then 62 hours a week at most of our branches, give or take. There might be a little tweaking that we do at some of our co-located facilities, but ultimately it means 4 late nights. So 4 nights that we are open till 9 p.m. And that is ultimately and overwhelmingly, council member, what people are looking for. That we're hoping that we will get back to a point where we need our buildings open till 9 p.m. so that we could use all those great study rooms and meeting rooms and conference areas.
Got
And
it.
of course, it goes without saying that it's 7 days of service at all locations.
Got it. What is the function of the digital neighborhood digital access team? I know there's a, I guess, increase for 5 FTEs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mentioned this in my testimony. So with some of the library's ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan Act funding, we are hiring these digital navigators who have much more flexibility in helping residents who may not have easy access to a library class or easy access to a library. They will be available to help residents with everything from, I'm having a hard time with my iPhone, to I'm having a hard time understanding how to use Microsoft Word for my resume, or can you help me with, filling out this form that I need in order to apply for some government benefit. It stresses the importance of sort of one-on-one, on-demand training. One thing that we have realized over the years in not just DC Public Library, but libraries, is that the people that require the most amount of help, especially with digital skills, are those that are least likely to be able to commit to, come to this class at such and such a branch at 2 p.m. on Saturday for the next month. So this is I'm sorry?
No, I was agreeing. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, so, those staff are not yet on board, but we're really thankful that the mayor saw the investment as worthy of supporting once that one-time funding is over.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I did notice Mlk Library was at 7.8 million and got decreased by 1.2 million. Can you speak to the reason for this decrease and what's the projected outcome? What's the impact of that?
Yeah, Chairman, we talked about this in a different way already. So this is the federal one-time federal funding decreases, both ARPA as well as the memory lab grant of 250,000. So you take those out, and that's where we are with MLK.
Yeah, oh, okay, thank you. I think it was different numbers from what I saw to that than what this is, but we'll go back and look at it. There are 7 libraries in the capital improvement plan. Can you give us an update on their construction? And please don't leave out Park Lane's turn. I know some of my friends are watching.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So the new Congress Heights Library, we actually have a lot to share with you. Tomorrow and Thursday, we are inviting 5 shortlisted teams to present to the library, and that of course includes the 2 community members who you have placed on the library team. So Ms. Richardson, Brenda Richardson, and Cheryl Moore will be joining us here at MLK tomorrow to begin the process by which we evaluate the design build team to execute our new Congress Heights Library. The expected completion date of that building will be about 2027. And we are excited to begin some deep community engagement once the firm, or the team, I should say, the design build team is on board. And then just moving on down very quickly, the Chevy Chase Library I've talked about a bit already. The library is going to be part of a mixed-use development that includes the rec center and housing. The RFP process is going to be led by DEMPED. And so we are really excited about that possibility. And that funding kicks in FY23. We've talked about the new Deanwood Library. The funding starts in FY23 for that as well. We are looking at, we did not have the benefit of money for a robust site selection process, but we have been talking to our colleagues both within the mayor's office, at the Office of Planning, and DEMPED. Also had a very good meeting with Councilmember Gray last week. And I know that the public witness mentioned the WMATA site between the existing rec center, library, and the metro tracks. We are absolutely open to any and all possibilities for the new Deanwood Library. And so, so we are there right now. The funding kicks in FY23. We have a small cap project, the Petworth Library. There's $1 million right now in the FY23 budget. And upon receipt of funds, we will bring in a design build team to help us shore up the numbers in terms of what we want to have done and what we can afford. And we look forward to coming back to you all to talk about the possibilities in our Petworth Library refresh. And then Northwest 1, that was spoken about rather at length during the public testimony. A site selection effort for a new library will begin in FY23. So that is in October, where we will begin doing site selection. We will also begin community engagement around that process, since it will be closer to happening. And that includes not just talking to community members in Edgewood, but it also talks about talking to community members who are served by the Northwest 1 Library currently. And then just 2 more quickly, the Rosedale Library, which is now in Ward 7. So I was able to talk to Councilmember Gray about that as well. Funding kicks in FY25. And then finally, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, when I was speaking to Councilmember Lewis George, the new 4A library, whatever that is, the funding begins in FY27.
Thank you. I have a few more questions around Shepard Park and Brightwood, but I see we are joined back by Ward 4 colleague, Councilmember Janice Lewis George.
Thank you, Chairman White. Director, I want to go to a few things, a few more updates. I know you just said to Councilmember Henderson, you love a ribbon cutting. So when is the ribbon cutting on the LaSalle? Well, it's going to be, we're in the naming process. So the new LaSalle Bacchus or Lamont Riggs Library, which is we have a council ceremonial naming resolution Councilman McDuffie has put forth. So soon to be renamed something else. But when is that ribbon cutting?
It's funny, we're going through a renaming process as well. I hope that they align.
Yes, they do. We've been in contact with DC Public Library has been in contact with all of the Lamont Riggs Civic Association, the Action Group, Councilman McDuffie's office. So The name that was proposed from the associations is also included in DCPL's process for the vote for that name. So we're really happy about the engagement on the name piece. Just wanted to get a sense of when we were going to get a delivery date for that.
We still don't have an exact date, council member. We're still looking at late spring, maybe at this point. But as soon as we've got something lined up, your office, Councilmember McDuffie's office, obviously the mayor, we will be sure to let you know. I've been at this for a long time, and few projects have elicited as much excitement as this project has, in terms of my observation. So we will not delay it by a day if we can help it. Right now, it's what makes it a sort of a impatient is just, making sure all the furniture gets in and all the computers get tied in, and, getting to substantial completion. We're working as fast as we can. And as soon as we are comfortable with a date, we'll let you know.
Okay, so I can report out late spring.
That is our plan, yeah.
Potentially early summer. I will say late spring, early
That's
summer.
very nice of you, council member.
I will say I have to manage expectations with my constituents. You understand? I don't want to say one thing and give another. So I will say that piece. So thank you for that. Want to ask, we mentioned the Petworth Library refresh. Where are we in this in this process, I guess, of design and what's going to be necessary? Is there any additional funding needed to be secured in this in the upcoming budget? We already secured funding previously, but just to make sure that the design and the plans can go forward as advocated for by the community.
Thank you, council member. So again, once the funding kicks in FY23, the design build team comes in to basically complete construction documents and help us sort of create a better budget than the one that we've got now estimated. I will say, quite frankly, that based on the volatility in the construction market, there is a chance that we might need some additional funding. And, we will be happy to work with you as well as the mayor's office when we know for sure what those numbers will be coming in on.
Okay, and right now, where are we estimated at?
Well, the funding is at $1 million. So that's what we've been, shooting for. But again, it's likely that it will be more.
Okay. All right. And you'll just let me know as soon as possible whenever.
Absolutely.
Okay. Want to ask about two things. DCPL's coordination, one with DVH crisis response team. I know you spoke about sort of the new, I guess, safety coordinator. I forget what name of the position, but a number of what I hear is DCPL issues. Sometimes DVH crisis response teams would need to respond because there's someone who's suffering from a mental health episode or have have a response based on whatever their disability might be at the time. And so I just want to get a sense of what kind of work you all are doing with DVH crisis response teams around supporting safety from a health aspect.
Sure, thank you. So, it was our Peer Navigator program stems from an initial partnership with the Department of Behavioral Health, whereby they had some grant dollars made some grant dollars accessible to us in order to introduce this new staffing model at DC Public Library. And we have found it super helpful in terms of just issues around just safety and sort of the comportment of individuals in our libraries. But also, I think it just gives us a better sense of accomplishment when we can better address the specific needs of individuals who might have, a lot of issues beyond what's happening in the library.
Right.
So the thing that we are really excited about is that the mayor has put in an additional 5 FTE so we can expand our peer navigator program.
Okay.
And those
And
peer-
are those navigators, what's their certification level? What are they considered clinical psychologists? Do they have?
No, these are individuals with lived experience of homelessness, who have just a better rapport, I think a certain understanding of why people are in the library, what they might need, what they might be shy in asking about.
Okay.
But these are not,
They're not like certified. They're not like certified social workers or
Exactly, yeah.
certified
We've got-
psychologists or any of.
that's exactly right. That's
Oh,
exactly right.
Okay. Do you guys have any of that type of, I guess, or that would be through DBH's crisis response team? So I guess if a navigator, essentially is dealing with someone who may be suffering from, I guess, schizophrenia, or for example, or a bipolar disorder, what would a peer navigator in that circumstance would call?
Or
on
our,
DBH?
Our public safety team, in an effort to, again, be more aligned with community care than either kicking people out of the library or having them arrested. They work very closely with our own social worker. So we do have one on staff, a woman by the name of Jean Badalamenti. I believe she's a Ward 4 resident, so a constituent of yours. And they do a lot of collaborative training so that our own public safety team has a better idea of how to respond to some of the examples of behavioral issues that you just mentioned. I'm happy, council member, to follow up with your team. I don't want to sell my staff short because I wasn't prepared to address the entire universe of work we do with either the Department of Behavioral Health or other agencies, but I am happy to follow up with you because my fear is that I will sell us short right now in a back and forth without better prep.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I was asking because I saw we have the additional funding for the FTEs there, and I just wanted to get a sense of what the service level was with those FTEs to see if it was something we needed to either make more robust or figure out ways in which we can add additional sort of services supports there.
Yeah, and I won't speak, on behalf of the mayor's office, but I do know that they have really impressed on us to be more collaborative with our sister agency. So don't just ask for money for something, figure out who's doing it in ways that, they might do it for you or with you better. So that is a commitment that we always have, and we will look into that with the additional FTEs that you just and let us know that you've identified for this. Okay.
I also want to ask about one more coordination, if I could, and that's with the Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement and the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services. Mlk Library, and in the past, I've been trying to figure out how to navigate because I have some young people in our ward who would be interested in going to the recording studio and doing the work. And I know our Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement, our violence interruption teams in Ward 4, and then we also have a Cure Violence Interruption team coming, need to understand sort of how they can utilize the space, the recording studio space, to help service some of our young people who may be court involved or are identified high risk by Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement, our violence interruption team, but also DYRS also, as you know, deals with committed youth. And DYRS committed youth, a number of them have a great interest as well in utilizing that recording studio. So I just want to get a sense of whether what's the I guess figuring out, and you don't have to answer here, but just figuring out how we can coordinate between the one's office, DYRS, to utilize slots and times for us to be able to engage young people at the Mlk Library, specifically around the recording studio and the podcast space and area, I know it's a resource there, and COVID was here in the pandemic, so we didn't really have a chance to engage in that way, but there's a waiting list of young people we are ready to get in there to help them sort of develop their talents more and to keep safe, especially as we enter the summer months.
Thanks, council member. And I just couldn't agree with you more. Anything that we can do to get more young people involved in some of the more exciting things that we are doing around the library system. Our public witness, Mr. Oliver, called it exotic technologies, I think, which I like a lot. It sounds very, well, exotic.
I was going to say it was exotic.
I'll say that, we did have a pretty good partnership with DYRS prior to the pandemic. We had the Credible Messenger program that we launched in our Shaw Library when we were having some issues with young people at Shaw, and they provided a very calming redirect to some library programming. So we are really excited about, if we do not bring the Credible Messengers back, working more closely with DYRS. And in terms of the ONE's office, I know that I don't think Director Hunter is the long-term answer there. At least I don't think, but he and I have a great relationship. We talk, every few weeks about things that we're doing together at PR and DCPL, and I am happy to extend that conversation to the ONE's team.
Okay. So that's perfect, because I want to get I know high-risk individuals identified by the ONE's office and the violence prevention team, and I would like to be able to get them on the books to have a session at the recording studio, essentially.
We'd love it. Yeah, we'd love it.
Okay, perfect. We will follow up on that piece, and just overall finding ways in which we address public safety issues, but even in education and enrichment and arts and music interests too. It's not just that, but all of those fall within that bucket. All right, I think that answers all of the questions that I have regarding our libraries, and I'll work with you some more just so we can figure out the Petworth Library renovations coming up soon, but also following up on this 4A Brightwood Park, Shepard Park situation and what needs to happen next. And thank you so much, as always. And thank you to your team.
Thank you, council member.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis George. I think I had a question that, yes, Councilmember Lewis George already answered. So the note, as a final note for this hearing, if anyone could not testify here today, you can submit your testimony through email to be included in official record to rya@dccouncil.us. The official record will close on April the 13th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. With no other business before this committee, this hearing is adjourned. The time is now 2:47 p.m. Thank you all who joined us today. Have a blessed Monday.
Thank you, council member.
Thank you to the staff as well. Thank you.